Sean Fennessey.
I'm Amanda Dobbins.
And this is 25 for 25, a big picture special conversation show about Before Sunset. And baby, you are going to miss that plane. Today we are talking about one of the most romantic movies ever made. It is directed by Richard Linklater. It is written by Richard Linklater, Julie Delpy, and Ethan Hawke, and it stars Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke. Now, Amanda, I must tell you.
Yes.
I very recently did a Rewatchables episode about this movie.
You guys did Before Sunset?
We did. We did Before
When?
Sunrise.
I listened to Sunrise.
And Before Sunset.
I missed Sunset. I didn't listen to it.
That's
Sorry.
great. So
But I
unfortunately,
did listen to the first one. I'm a fan of the Rewatchables.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I am as well. I have talked about this movie at great length recently.
Okay.
So I don't want to bore you. I want you to be in charge.
Okay. Well, what did you guys learn from your Rewatchables Before Sunset episode?
I kind of just poured my heart out a little bit.
Okay.
And, you know, I greatly identify with both of the characters in these films. And I'm a longtime disciple of the Linklater project.
Mm-hmm.
And this might just be my very favorite movie he's ever made.
I think it's mine too. And I think that it's notable that it's mine over Before Sunrise.
So tell me why.
So, and I rewatched both Sunrise and Sunset for this project just because I hadn't seen Sunrise in a while, and because it is a deep pleasure just like to be in this world. At least the first two. I noticed notably I did not revisit Before Midnight.
And I have not revisited Before Midnight for the Rewatchables or for this.
Maybe it's the best one and we're just too scared.
We are currently in the Before Midnight era of our lives.
Yeah. So, but I was thinking to myself, if Before Sunrise were eligible for this project, would we pick Sunrise or Sunset? And I know that I personally would pick Sunset because I think it's both just a richer text, and also a more of a cinematic and performance feat, because the first one, which is, if you haven't seen Before Sunrise, I really don't know what you're doing listening to this podcast or, living out in the world, but that's okay. It's about two young people, early 20s, who meet on a train on the way to Vienna, and one is an American, Jessie, played by Ethan Hawke. The other is a French woman, Celine, played by Julie Delpy. And they're thrown together on a train, or they, meet each other on the train, and they decide to spend the night together in Vienna, walking around Vienna before Jessie has to catch his plane back to the US. And I mean, it's like a landmark film, right? And it changes, and it is
one of the key independent films of the 1990s in America. Yes.
And it really is just two young people talking in a very specific 90s way, Linklater way, and taking all of the ideas and emotions and philosophical nonsense that is in their heads, and it's certainly in your head if you are like a hyper educated 20-something in the 90s, and putting it into words and putting it on screen and making it very natural, and memorializing not just like the connection that two people can have for like one magical moment in time, which is the setup of that movie and what's magical about it, but also kind of just like what two people talking at each other can really, really accomplish. It's like, it is
how it can be cinematic to just watch people talk. Yeah.
And also that it can be like a real emotional connection. Like it is an achievement. It's one for the talkers, it's not a coincidence that we love these movies. So it is
professional yappers.
Yeah, exactly. And people were like, more words are better. Right. So, it invents this franchise, it invents language. There is something like, so they're so young, and it is like, first love, magical moments. The way the movie ends very famously is that they don't exchange information, and they agree to meet in 6 months on the same train platform. And, if they show up, they show up. And if they don't, they don't. And you don't know. Right. So there is something like wonderfully romantic, dramatic, just like a perfect movie, which makes the fact that the sequel is so amazing and maybe even better,
Mhm,
somehow
mhm.
to me.
Here's the thing. The first film
Yeah,
has no conflict.
sure.
Maybe
Okay.
they don't always get along or see exactly eye to eye about things,
Right.
but it is a wander. It is a
Yeah.
long discussion
Yes.
and of two people who are learning who the other person is.
Right.
And
And learning who they are as well. They're like
Yes.
two very unsure young people in the
yes,
world.
figuring out who they are and being guided by the laws of attraction.
Right.
That's really what drives that movie. It's an amazing movie. I think it is
It's sublime.
very important to me, and as I know it is to you. And I think it's critical in the Ethan Hawke story. You know, even though he had been in big movies before this as a child actor, like it totally reshapes, I think, his kind of heartthrob persona. All men fell in love with Julie Delpy. I don't know any straight men that don't want to have a family with Julie Delpy.
Right,
Like
sure.
she is just such an intoxicating person. The second film, though, is simply one of the great movies ever made about relationships
Yeah.
and love. It is
And it's
astounding how deep it is.
and it's an incredible setup, which is that 9 years later, Jesse has written a book about this night and is giving a reading in Paris at the end of the book tour, and Celine shows up at Shakespeare & Co. And once again, like they wander before he has to take his plane back to but it's two people who had one magical night and then it didn't work out,
Mm-hmm.
or it didn't come back together.
Mm-hmm.
And so suddenly it's people later in life, lost love, lost connections, the road not traveled, dissatisfaction with their current life, just like this incredibly deep, so much to work with stuff that is like miraculously like built in because they have the first movie. Like it's magical.
It's an ingenious way of telling a story. There have been other movies that have attempted to do this kind of thing. The most famous example is probably the documentary series 7 Up,
Right.
which found people every 7 years, caught up with them and talked, like sort of showed what their lives were, and they talked about their experiences of the world and the way that time passing can change a person and change how they see the world, or how they are walking through it. But to have a narrative structure
Right.
that doesn't really have to think too much about plot. And then the other thing that I think elevates this movie over the first film is, even though Hawke and Delpy clearly contributed to their characters in Before Sunrise, they are credited screenwriters on this movie. And they are both putting big parts of their real lives into these characters and the words that they're saying. And I'm not saying that necessarily makes the movie better per se, but it makes it more meaningful to me.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when you're watching a movie, you're like, actors, this is a construct. This came from some guy sitting alone in a room. He had an idea. He banged it out on a typewriter. They handed it to actors on the set. They learn their lines, and then they say the lines, and then they go home. This is a way more personal form of mainstream movie making. And that level of emotionality, Hawke famously going through a divorce during the making of this movie. So many of the things that Jesse is saying about these ideas of like obligation and the version of myself that I think I should be versus the version of myself that I want. It's like for him to be so close to the bone on stuff like that in a movie that would open in thousands of movie theaters is such a fascinating, like hot experience of and the same I think goes for Julie Delpy and her deep feelings of like the inability to love and not believing in love anymore and not really finding the person that makes her feel the way that she wants to feel and she feels other people may have felt about her. And there's this kind of like desperation in these two people that has always been, from the moment I saw it, my wife and I saw it, we were not married when it came out in 2004. I think we saw it at the Angelica.
Okay.
We'd been living in New York at that time for a few months. And I remember vividly the trains shaking at the Angelica. You can always feel the subway. And when the movie ended, this movie's 80 minutes long.
I mean,
more than one person screamed out like, no, like, I don't want this to be over. Like, this can't be finished. I need to know what happens next. I need to follow these people. It's such a visceral movie going memory for me because everyone who was there, and obviously it was an Angelica audience when we'd all seen Before Sunrise, but we were so invested.
Yeah.
You know,
it's true.
It's rare to be that invested in a movie.
I mean, I get it. You don't want it to be over. Though I do find this is the greatest movie ending of our lifetimes, maybe.
It's amazing.
I rewatched it with my husband again the other night. And it was just like silent, wrapped. You know, when you're watching at home with someone else, you know, someone's got to go like do something or you're checking the, you know,
want a
answering
cocktail?
a text message
what's on my phone?
or whatever. And I was just like the two of us like sitting in darkness, like holding our breath through the entire last scene. It's like, it's so simple and electric, and the power of Julie Delpy is palpable. But it's not ambiguous to me, at least. I don't know. Maybe you feel differently. You don't want it to end because it's so magical, but also, unlike Before Sunrise, I don't feel like I have any like questions about where things are headed.
Did you feel that way before midnight? Because the great reveal of Before Midnight, if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, but it's like they not only got together, but they got together and stayed together. And they got married and they had a family.
Right.
And
I guess, I mean,
you wanted that to be true after Before Sunset. You wanted them to consummate.
I'll be honest, like, I'm not really thinking about whether they have a family at the end of Before Sunset in like a happy way.
But
you know?
they allow each other to be together. Because you think so. Okay. Well, continue.
Well, I mean, it's just it's all right there. The baby, you're going to miss that plane, and then his smile, and it's like in that moment, it's like, you know that they're going to like try to be together, and I'm from rom-com training, you know, like I don't actually need to think about the happily ever after. You know, we're good.
Yep.
But you know that, and as Before Midnight teaches us, like you don't really want to all of the time, but there is like an assurance in that ending that they're in the moment, they're together.
There is for the most part, and I think that people scream no and in the Angelica, not because they needed to know what happened next specifically, but because they just didn't want this feeling to end.
Right.
They didn't want to know. Certainly the final roughly 8 minutes of the movie, once we get into Celine's apartment, are they just teleport you to another place. Yeah. And I totally relate to I would say roughly the minute they get into the van to head back to Celine's apartment. I mean, that stretch of the movie, the final 20 or so minutes, is just insanely brilliantly written, staged, performed. I'm never more locked into a movie than those sequences. I think you can say like this movie is 18 on our list. Why is it not number 1 based on how rapturously we're talking about the movie? Right. It is a small film. It's a modest movie. Its aims are very discreet. I would say it nails all of them. I think just in terms of its ambition and its intimacy, like it does everything that it wants to do. It's weird. I weirdly am a little lower on it now that Before Midnight has come around, because what it has made me do is see the ways in which their love was flawed in this movie. So because they have a tumultuous marriage.
Right.
And we know that. A lot of the things that I can see in revisiting the film, and this is, this doesn't take away from the quality of the movie, but it's my relationship to it.
Well, also, this is like your materialist, like spreadsheet hat coming on a little bit.
Yeah. Perhaps.
Yeah.
But in this movie, Jesse is desperate to sleep with Celine. And he is so horny and like so forward throughout the film. And he is like that in the first film too, but he is really hot for her in this movie, in part because he says he hasn't been laid in a really long time.
Right.
And you can see that that's actually not ultimately a good motivator for making big changes in your life.
Yes.
And she is a person who has lost the ability to feel like she can love anymore. And so this occurrence that she allows to happen by going to Shakespeare and Company is her like kind of desperate attempt. It's kind of like her last ditch effort in a way to be like, can I find the sort of romantic love that I truly seek? And it's ill-fated in a way.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I think so. I mean, he did also like write a book about her, So
totally,
it's her, and she's like, she says she read the book twice, and I was like, it really screwed me up, and also you idealized it, so I need to come like confront.
Do you believe
reality
that?
Anyway,
see, because I feel like she's just playing a game the first 60 minutes of this movie with him. Because she doesn't want to reveal herself. She's embarrassed. She's annoyed by what he did.
I think the game is ungenerous. I think that she is protective to your point of she has just cut herself off from the world and is like also an intensely neurotic French person. And
indeed,
so is not letting any emotions come out.
Mhm.
And I mean, like, and also like is a character. Like she is just, you know,
Yeah, she's kooky.
batty and kooky
Yeah.
and in the most mesmerizing, enchanting way.
Yes.
But so it's not until the car ride that that either of them actually let their like guard down.
What does he call her? A manic depressive communist? Yeah. Game is probably ungenerous,
Yeah.
but particularly her for failing to remember that they had sex that night.
Right. Well,
And
yeah,
then
that was
revealing,
purposeful.
And
yeah.
she was like, this is something women do.
Yeah.
She's seeking to kind of control the temperature
Yes,
of the engagement.
for sure.
And she's trying to do that so that she can protect herself.
Right.
But deep down, we know that she wants something because she says she can no longer access something. And so I think what I'm saying is, this is an obvious point, and I'm sorry to belabor it, but the sourness of the third film, which is a really good movie,
Yeah.
has taken something away from my first experience of this movie. And that was the intention of Before Midnight.
Sure.
It worked. They did the thing that they meant to do. But I was so starry-eyed at the end of this movie the first time I saw it.
Right.
And so swept away by that feeling. And despite whatever like spreadsheet king stuff you want to say, or whatever like cynical stuff, like I am ultimately very romantic at
I
heart.
was also going to say, but that's your high school sweetheart, like
Yes.
absolutely coming in as well.
Yes.
There, you know, you contain multitudes.
But so I think that it has made me just a little embittered about how is the takeaway like none of that is real. That like actually, and of course it is, like that's the most mature, sophisticated way of thinking about it is there are no great, you know, subjective sonnets, and there is no true, you know, soulmate-ish experience in the universe.
You know,
we're doing the best with what we have.
A thing that really stuck out to me on this rewatch, when I've seen this movie a bunch of times, was the Julie Delpy of it all in this movie. And I mean, he is obviously great and wonderful, but this movie is centered around Celine is like the one that got away, quote unquote, which is like a time-honored, you know, film, music, literature trope.
Yep.
To the point that he has literally written a book about the one that got away. And this movie in a lot of ways is in her character and her like kookiness and her closed offness and everything that Julie Delpy is doing is like maybe not like undermining it, but forcing the Jessie character to interact with the real version of the one that got away, which is sort of like an interesting, there's movies and then there's real life and there's like how you imagined it in your head and then like how it is. So for me, it's not that it turns sour or something. It's that I think that the movie and the construct has some idea of what happens in real life versus what happened in the movies. But then the neat trick of it is that it also then does give you like a truly romantic, like just in the movies ending, which is like what we all want, you know? Like that is like why we go to the movies. So I guess I don't feel like it's taken away from me just because things, you know, real life happens in Before Midnight, because real life like is sort of happening in this movie too. I mean, they're both kind of losers, you know?
It's an interesting way to think about it. Like, I think that this movie does a really good job of showing that one person can be many things. In the case of Jesse, he is a successful novelist. He wrote a book, it got published, he's on a book tour in Europe.
Right.
That's pretty good.
In 2004, though.
Sure.
I mean, you know, a different scene, but
yeah. I mean, you know, no judgment on the publishing industry in 2025. But he did what he set out to do, which is to be a writer, and he published a novel.
Right.
He's also seemingly a bad husband.
Yeah.
And has like real classic like Texas horn dog instincts.
Sure.
At least around this woman.
Yeah.
He's also clearly like a very sincere father.
Mm-hmm.
He might be a bad writer.
Yeah.
That's in play.
Yes.
But I think he's also a pretty sophisticated thinker about the experience of life.
Well, yeah.
And both of those things can be true. And so he's a full person. He's not, and the exact same thing is true of Celine.
Mm-hmm.
Celine is incredibly nervy.
Mm-hmm.
She is a little bit emotionally distant at this stage of her life. She's also wildly empathetic and thinks of the world and people beyond herself.
Right.
She's artistic and
Mhm.
creative,
Principled.
and she's ethical.
Yeah.
And she's also like kind of a pain in the ass and a little bit nuts.
Yeah.
And he's morose and depressive, and she's batty.
Right.
And yet, when I look at them, I'm like, these are the ideal partners. Like this is the masculine and feminine ideal. And it results in, like you said, I thought you put that perfectly. It's just like, it still gives you the perfect movie magic ending.
Right.
Even though when you're watching the movie, I'm like, this bitch is crazy. Like, and I'm like, Jesse is like, he's got to get out of his own head. This is pathetic. Yeah. And I think that makes them relatable and also perfect. And the kind of like pedestaling that we like to do with movie stars and with great characters like this, like it all applies. And it's also done really, really in a really sophisticated way, filmmaking wise, where lots of long takes, long walk and talks. There are walk and talks in the first film, but there's much more cutting.
Right.
It doesn't feel like this. It feels much more documentary style in this movie to me. And I don't know. It honestly feels like they're having the conversation. That's the thing that I take away from this, is it does not feel performed. It feels like they are just saying what's on their mind, and that idea that what's in their lives was pumped into the dialogue of the films.
Right.
Makes me feel like I'm watching their podcast.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Sure. But in Paris. I mean, because that's the other
On
thing.
the streets of Paris,
it is literally just...
Should we do that? Should we relocate the pod to the streets of Paris?
I would love to.
I know you would.
It would be great. But I mean, yes, it's just international landmarks pop up in the background of literally like half the scenes. It's a miracle. It's really very special.
Yeah, he's like, oh, Notre Dame.
Yeah. Well, they get on a bateau mouche. Yeah. And she's like, oh, I've never done this before.
It's been a long time since I've been in Paris.
Yeah.
You're going soon.
I am. Yeah.
When are you going?
End of August, right before I go to the Venice Film Festival.
It's very exciting.
I know. I'm really, really quite excited.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Life is all about choices. For example, what happens when you show up at the movies and you're not totally sure what you want to see? Maybe Final Destination Bloodlines, maybe Lilo and Stitch. You've got to make a choice. At State Farm, their goal is to help you make decisions that you feel good about. That's why with the State Farm Personal Price Plan, you can choose the right amount of coverage to help create a competitive price. Talk to a State Farm agent today to learn how you can choose to bundle and save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state. Do you have road not taken thoughts?
Do you mean romantically or? I don't think so. Not really.
It's real Dobbins energy.
Well,
everything I've done is correct.
Like, I was just trying to think about, like, I guess there's like one other person like I could have married, but like then I would be like, I don't know. That would be a bad scene, and I might live somewhere that I don't want to offend anyone listening, but like I don't know, like it's
wow. Your ex is listening to this show. It's pretty wild.
No, I meant like the people wherever other people live. I think I would be living, and I would be like a little more trad wife. You know,
Cobb County, Georgia.
No.
Okay.
No. Absolutely never.
You know, I'm going to Georgia next week.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you will be staying in Cobb County because you love it and you love the people there.
Not the case. I'll be staying near Truist Park, watching the New York Mets combat the Atlanta Braves.
Do you have any road not takens?
No, I dated a couple of people in a very short interim time before my wife and I got back together, but no, I was never really invested in anything else besides that. I mean, professionally, I probably have like 1,000.
Yeah, well, sure.
Like it's really this is a real 1 in a million where I landed in my life. So in that respect, with my personal life, no. I mean, have kids, not have kids. That's like another example. That's an element of this movie is that Hawke having a child,
right? His
character Jesse having a child makes him feel confined to this life that he's chosen, which is a crazy thing to say out loud because he, of course, has 2 children with a woman he's no longer married to.
Right. I might also argue that just in the context of the character, like don't say it out loud, even if you feel that way.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Is that both characters keep saying things out loud
that you're not supposed to say. Yeah.
Which is
how a movie works.
It is, but somehow this is better.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I don't know why it's better. Is it better writing? Is it better performance?
I think it's both.
Is it these movies came to us at the right time in our lives?
I guess so. We're like 10 years behind them every single time.
Which I think is helpful.
I remember that. I know I told my dad that Before Sunset was the next one. He audibly groaned. I guess it's not Barry Levinson's 10 Men. Sorry, Dad. 10 Men.
We talked about this with Bill on the before pods, and Bill is roughly the same age as Hawke, and I think Linklater's a little older than him, but he was watching these movies as these things were happening to him,
right?
And I think he like related to Jesse, but sometimes it can be like too close. Whereas like it was easier for me to be like idealize who that person was. It's like when you meet like an older kid in school and you're like, how does that kid know how to do all that stuff?
Right. And do I want to do it that way, but then can this happen?
But when you get older than these people, these characters, and they stay this age forever, you're like, why is this guy such a loser? I didn't think he was a loser in 2004.
I don't think I
loserish.
Yeah, I don't think I really did either. And well, I think I probably thought of him more in the storied Ethan Hawke tradition of Troy and just like hot losers, and where like being a loser is like part of the, especially like in the 90s, not like totally having your act together is part of the charm.
Yeah, I never could.
That's such a thing.
It's not my thing.
Yeah. And like ultimately, it's not my thing. But like, if he worked that appeal, and so you could see it. But now he's just a loser. I saw Before Midnight, like right when Zach and I first got together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's real like, well, that like won't happen. That's like they made some bad choices. But I have not seen it since. So I don't know. I guess it does happen.
I gotta go back to Before Midnight.
What if we watch it and we're like, oh, it should have been Before Midnight?
Well, let's talk about the Linklater movies that we didn't pick, because it's pretty safe to say there was always going to be a Linklater movie on this list. Probably his most iconic films to this show are this trilogy and Dazed and Confused. So Dazed and Confused obviously not eligible.
Right.
But then you look in the 2000s, and this is an interesting time to be talking about him because he's got 2 movies coming out this year. Let's just go through his movies. Why not?
Okay.
Waking Life, Tape, School of Rock, Before Sunset, Bad News Bears, A Scanner Darkly, Fast Food Nation, Me and Orson Welles, Bernie, Before Midnight, Boyhood, Everybody Wants Some, Last Flag Flying, Where'd You Go Bernadette, Apollo 10.5, and Hitman. Now, he's been incredibly active in this time. He's made almost 20 movies in this century. And some of them are just clear like misses, like didn't totally turn out the way that they Fast Food Nation, Me and Orson Welles. Those movies have things to recommend about them, but they're not in the upper echelon. School of Rock is his biggest hit.
Okay.
And I think it's probably the movie that he is best known for in the generation below us.
It was recently recommended to me that I show Knox School of Rock, and that movie really does hit with the children. Which makes
a ton of sense given your son's musical gifts.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. But just also that it is for people younger than us.
It matters.
In small children.
Yes,
it matters.
It very much matters. And I like it perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Boyhood's the most acclaimed movie that he's made this century. I wasn't really going to make a bid for Boyhood, though I know I like it a lot more than you do.
Yeah.
I haven't revisited it in a while, but I have a similar feeling when I watch that movie as what I feel when I watch Before Sunset, which is that this feels very real to me.
Sure. And it's a similar undertaking, and that it is an experiment with how to demonstrate time and someone's life and maturing like over time on film.
Yep.
And the project with Boyhood was that they filmed it every year and released it all at once, versus the Before trilogy, which they're doing it every 9 years. But same idea. I just think that the Before trilogy turned out better.
Is there any other movie in that run?
Everybody Wants Some.
Yeah.
I think that's the one that you like annotated on the list, because you had a phase where we had a list and then you were just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah. And
your devil's advocate was Everybody Wants Some.
I would never say I like Everybody Wants Some more than Before Sunset.
But it's powerful.
It is very powerful.
Yeah.
To me, it is the origins of Glenn. Glenn
Absolutely.
Powell.
That's where we met him, right?
Yes. I met him on, what was that Fox show, Scream Queens? That was the first time I ever saw him. Yeah. Which he was very funny on that show.
Not Spy Kids 3?
I probably...
Jack, you Spy Kids 3?
Not Spy Kids 3 specifically, but I am a fan of the Spy Kids franchise.
Okay, good.
Good to know. This is pretty comfortably the right choice.
There was not
it was
a lot
not
of
a
discussion.
not a big fight.
Not a lot of.
So what really is its legacy then? Because it's obvious why I made the list, right? It's these performers at their best. It's this great screenwriting. It's this very simple but gorgeously executed direction.
Right.
It's a movie that speaks to a lot of people in a very deep way. But like, is it a big movie forever? I don't know.
Well, this is the movie that turns the Before trilogy from just like a romantic 90s movie to an actual, like, to a project.
A proper trilogy.
It also brings in the larger ideas of what if you follow these people over time,
Mhm.
and what if you watch it at different phases of your life. And
Mhm.
so he does this before Boyhood, even though I guess they'd been filming Boyhood for a while. Anyway, that it introduces this type of very Linklater style experiment of filmmaking and this interest of his, both in his filmmaking. And, you know, people haven't ripped this off exactly, but there's a lot of movies where people are talking together and falling in love.
What do you mean? We're about to see Robert Downey Jr. in
Right.
another Marvel film.
Right.
It's been a 15-year odyssey of following Tony Stark turned Victor Von Doom.
Right. But, you know,
It's the same thing.
but this like has become a reference for other people
Mhm.
making movies.
Yeah, I agree. I think he kind of found the perfect vessel for his
Yeah.
ideas of time and time's
Yeah,
passage. The Before Midnight was 2013. So it had been 9 years between sunrise and sunset,
Yeah,
and 9 years between sunset and midnight.
Right.
And now it has been 12 years. And there's no sign
Right.
that another movie is coming. In fact, Linklater, 1, has another movie with Hawke, his first since
Right.
Boyhood, Blue Moon, coming out later this year. And 2, he's in the middle of another durational movie project.
Right. Merrily We Roll Along.
Yes, which is taking place over 20 years. And I don't know. What's up? What's up with Celine and Jesse? What is their legacy?
I'm at peace not knowing. I'm opposite
You are.
of the Angelica people. Yeah, because
Don't you want to know how to live in your 50s?
no, man, I feel like I just got to get through it and then I'm on lock, you know? If I make it to 55,
Uh-huh.
or I don't know how old I'll be once I goes to college, God bless him. Will they have
Not
college?
55.
Will they have colleges then? You don't know.
You won't be able to afford them. That's really the problem.
Honestly, maybe Cy will be a prodigy. Okay.
That's a good point. If he's Doogie Howser, that's great news.
Yeah, that's great news for everyone. No, I feel like it'll be cool. And if it's not cool
You think being in your 50s will be cool?
yeah, to your point about Before Sunrise having no conflict, like what will the conflict be once the kids are gone? And
Oh my goodness,
the
are you
logistics
serious?
are out.
That's when it all really starts. He talks about this in the movie.
I guess.
He says, I don't want to be one of those guys who gets divorced at 52 and spends all my time thinking about what was it all for? What did I do with my life?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree with him. If you're going to get divorced earlier.
Why
know?
is that important?
Because then you haven't wasted all the time. But like, you know,
Mhm.
at 58 or however I'll be,
Mhm.
if Zach and I want to like be doing different things, then I think we should just like go do different things and have dinner at the end of the day. And that'll be nice. You know, I'm not too stressed about it.
Interesting. Okay, so you guys will not be like parasailing together every
I
day.
will never learn to golf. Let me say that right now. I will literally never learn to
Let me
golf.
ask you a question.
Yeah.
Why?
It seems boring. And I don't like being bad at things.
Mhm.
We know
Let's
that.
put it in the right order,
Do
please.
do you think that that's a revelation that we're making, that I don't like being bad at things?
No, I just like hearing you say it out loud.
Yeah, I don't. So
Okay.
that seems, and that's the point of golf, as I understand it. It's like be outside with your friends and then just like to be eternally frustrated by it. That seems like
That's not the
the
point.
worst plan ever.
But how nice is it to be outside with your friends?
That is nice, but I will just have a cocktail.
Okay. Would you ride along in the cart with him?
No.
Why? What's wrong with that?
No, listen, I wish that
You would be together.
No, that's what I'm saying. He can go do his thing,
Okay.
and then I'll go do my thing, and then we'll have a nice dinner and talk about our day.
Okay.
That seems good. That's great.
I feel that you need Before Dawn, which is the final installment of this film, so you can know how to live in your 50s.
I think I'm doing okay.
Okay. What else? Like legacy.
You made such a beautiful list. Oh, I thought you were doing the movies if you like.
Oh, well, we'll get there momentarily.
Yeah.
Any other like legacy notes for this film? You know, Delpy has not really been terribly present. She's very present at the Hollywood Farmers Market, where I see her on a fair occasion.
Yeah.
But you know, she's directed a few films
I liked
in the last 10 years.
2 Days in Paris. Is that what it's
She
called?
did 2 Days in Paris and 2 Days in New York.
Yeah, 2 Days in Paris was very funny.
Yes, 2 Days in New York was the Chris Rock movie.
That sounds right.
She's directed a couple films that I don't think were released in the United States. But she has not really been as much of a linchpin in Hollywood productions. Hawke's interesting. He's had quite an arc.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about him a little bit during our Paul Newman Hall of Fame episode because he
Right.
directed that 6-part documentary about Newman and Woodward's life. Still obviously a huge part of movies and television right now. He's in that very short list of greatest podcast guests in the universe.
I was honestly about to say one of the greatest watch guests.
He's just
of
an
all
awesome
time.
talker.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the documentary in a lot of ways is like video podcasts with a lot of archival and research.
Him
added
riffing
in.
with Billy Crudup and and his other acting buddies. Is he underrated as an actor? Overrated? I don't even know how to think about him because he didn't do the thing where he was like, I need to be at the center of every movie.
Right.
You know, he didn't pursue that traditional mainstream stardom thing. He was always willing to take chances. He was always willing to play number 2 to some big stars, Training Day being the most famous example, got himself an Oscar nomination. He's going to be this year in The Black Phone 2.
Right.
And he has had this tradition of making...
What's the setup of that again?
He plays a child murderer who locks kids in his basement.
And what is the Black Phone? Where?
The Black Phone sends a call out into the world, and in the second film, I think it's into the world of the undead.
Oh.
He met a grisly end in the Black Phone.
Okay.
And so I think he's being connected to whatever from hell.
Oh, got it.
Like
so the Black Phone calls him.
We'll see. We'll have to check out the film. But he's been using these horror movies to kind of like fund his directorial projects or his TV stuff. And
I mean, he, like Linklater, came of age in the 90s, like indies scene, and even, you know, in Reality Bites, which was a more mainstream, but he plays like the Houston, like angry, like deadbeat, really hot loser.
Mm-hmm.
And has like sort of stayed in that lane.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even as he is in big budget movies or whatever, he's not a superhero. He's never been like, and now I will like have my Cary Grant moment. He's still sort of, you know, 90s slacker, but not like slacker in he's very ambitious and works a lot, but is staying on the edge of things.
I think you're forgetting his role in the TV series Moon Knight.
I never saw that, so it doesn't exist to me.
Okay. He played Arthur Harrow.
Is that the one? That's not a superhero. That's
He's
Star
a cult,
Wars, right?
No. It's Marvel. He was a cult leader and an avatar of Amit.
Was he a superhero though, or a villain?
He was a villain.
I think
but they blurred the line in Moon Knight. Kind of an anti-hero situation.
Of course, yeah, there we go. You know, only the most complex work.
Do you know who played Moon Knight?
Oscar Isaac?
That's right.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was part of it.
You should go home today and watch every episode of Moon Knight. See how it goes. Let me know if you enjoy it. I'll meet you at the potluck afterwards.
I think playing a villain is different than playing the superhero. You know?
Fair enough. Recommend it if you like.
You made such a wonderful little list of all my favorite movies. So why don't you just read them?
I will do that. Brief Encounter, David Lean's masterpiece. Very important movie for my wife and I. No surprise, this is a big one for Before Sunset Heads. Jules and Jim, of course.
Yeah.
I wrote The Notebook.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're just a basic boy and you know about The Notebook, but you don't know about Before Sunset, give this movie a whirl.
You're not basic. You're open to your emotions if you know about The Notebook. If you
only read People magazine and this is your first ever podcast, welcome to podcasts. Welcome to the big picture. Congrats on having seen The Notebook. Give Before Sunset a try. Past Lives.
Yeah.
We've just spoken about Materialists on this podcast, and that's a good fit. Pride and Prejudice.
Mm-hmm. The Joe Wright 2005?
That was the one I was thinking of.
You know, you saw they're remaking it?
As a film?
I think they're doing a TV series again on Netflix after the BBC series with Colin Firth and Jennifer Ely. I know. I agree.
Sleepless in Seattle?
Great call.
Frances Ha?
Love it.
Anything else you want to add to that? It's a pretty robust
I mean,
collection of films.
no, because I was just like, well, that's every movie I love, basically.
Who are these people who are like, I'm really into Frances Ha, but I've never heard of Before Sunset that I've imagined? Do they exist?
Maybe. And then what a wonderful day for them. You know?
So there's a scene in this movie, and I did talk about this on the Rewatchables episode, but just kills me every time, which is they're in the van, in the back of the van, and she's just had a really like very frustrated moment where she's mad at him and she wants to get out of the car.
Right.
He convinces her to stay. And she has her moment, and then it shifts to him, and he's in a real sadness, and he starts talking about his dreams.
Right.
And he has 2 recurring dreams with her.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, you're at the train station, you're on the platform, and you go by, and you go by, and you go by. And he starts telling the story of the other dream, which is that she's naked in bed, pregnant.
Right.
And he touches her ankle.
Yeah.
And he turns and he looks out the window, and she reaches for him to touch him.
Yeah.
And just as she's about to make contact with him, he turns back and she pulls her arm away. And when I saw it the first time and when I saw it last night, I was like, this is the most emotionally powerful thing I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah.
I am devastated by this tiny little action. And to me, like, that is the ultimate legacy of the movie, is that in these small moments, it communicates something so strong that hits you. Like, I was crying watching the movie last night. I'm also
thinking of Julie Delpy's.
I've seen it like 40 times.
I know, Julie Delpy's face in that moment, and she that also like tears up and looks like a little like shocked, but is like hit by the emotional blunt force of it's really amazing.
This is a great film.
Yeah.
Is it too high on the list or too low? Whatever.
What's done is done.
Very well. Thank you to Jack Sanders for his work on this episode. Later this week, we will watch The Zombies of 28 Years Later. We'll see you then.